Hello and welcome to the Recursion Cafe, where we play games from the discard pile. In today's game of Unmatched, we have myself on the left and Paul on the right. I am playing Black Widow. She and Maria Hill are both ranged fighters with 2 movement. She has 13 health and Maria has 6. She starts with an additional card in hand, which is a mission, one of 5 unique schemes in her deck. Once you meet the requirements of the mission, you can play it, which will have effects which are unique, and then find the next mission in her deck. And Bullseye, he is a solo fighter, ranged 14 health and 2 movement. His ability lets him hit anyone who is 5 spaces away, ignoring zones, which is incredibly powerful. He's a really tricksy fighter and he likes to dance around and just keep the aggression up. So here he is stepping in. We're on the helicarrier today, and he's going to hit Black Widow with, for my next trick, into a Widow's Kiss. So no damage done, no movement is available, but it's a really good bait card. So baited out a big defense on my end, allows him to draw a card and gain an action, which lets him keep shooting away. So he'll hit again. He hasn't won a combat yet, so I'm not feeling too upset about that. It's a feint into an I never miss, so only the 1 damage through, and Paul does not get to boost that. Probably should have feinted the first one. My mistake there. So we'll maneuver in. Even though he was able to shoot me last time, I am a regular range fighter, so I have to actually be in his zone. So I'll walk up as close as I can. He will attack with I plan to be here, or as Paul kind of references it as momentous stay, into a caught in a web, which is useless in this regard. So just 2 damage over the 3 because no after combat effects were able to be cancelled. And then he of course walks away. So not a great start so far for me. I'm down 3 health. I will boost with my Moscow protocol and use the laser turret in Bullseye's corner to shoot him. My reasoning was just that I wasn't really ever going to be able to attack first in this setup and deal damage and then have the action spare to play the mission, so I may as well spend it to boost. More on that as a decision point later. So here is a boosted I never miss into a double identity. I will immediately swap fighters. Boosted with the battlefield item, and I think that Paul declines to actually boost it with the card and takes the card draw instead. So now Black Widow is in his zone, which is what I wanted, but he will attack again. He has won a combat so far, so I think at this point I say, no, it's just the 4 that will cancel my ability, or my value. I call that very wrong. It's another I never miss, because he has 4 in the deck, and he boosts it with another I never miss. So I just take an undefended 5. So yeah, poor decision making on my part there. Well played by Paul. Whether he kind of decided to bluff or that's just what he had in hand, either way it worked. So here we have a Widow's Bite into a feint. Unfortunately I don't get the discard, but it is 2 damage through, so it's not the worst. The first damage I've done to him? No, not just yet. First combat damage after the laser turret. And then I'll maneuver and just try and block him off from running too far away. And that didn't work at all. So he will walk up and stand by the EMP array and attack again, of course. I will defend. He's attacking Maria this time, so it's a ricochet into an acting director of S.H.I.E.L.D. My after combat effect will trigger first, which means I can move my fighters out of each other's zone, kind of nullifying the ricochet, or at least kind of making sure I can choose where the ricochet goes. I will then recur my scheme, and Ricochet does 1 damage to Maria Hill. Really good versatile card there, lots going on with that one. I will maneuver, I'm right next to him, and here is a fake out into a Master Strategist. So even though I did lose the combat, I do draw a card and gain an action, but Master Strategist allows Bullseye to dance out of my zone, and so I can't really follow up. But I think at this point, cards in hand for me are not the worst thing, so I decide just to step out of Bullseye's firing arc and be 6 spaces away. So far, no mission schemes, apart from the one I started with, which it turns out Black Widow is a lot less effective if she doesn't have any missions to complete at all. I'm even standing in Paul's starting space. It would be amazing if I drew that right now, but no. It was not to be. So I'll boost yet again with the Moscow protocol that I just drew, and will be in range to attack Bullseye. I think this is from Black Widow, and it's a Widow's line into an arrogant but effective. So Paul gets to move Bullseye 2 spaces, and I get to move him 2 spaces. 1 damage goes through, which I think we might have missed there, but it's just the 1 damage. It's not the biggest deal. I do have him kind of hemmed in at the moment. He does have an escape route, but he will have to boost to get out of there. So it looks like he's attacking Maria, I believe. This could be anything. So I choose to decide to play the life model decoy, which is a poor call. So I just take 2 damage anyway, and I don't trigger the ability. Maria's down to 2 health. Widow is down to 5. Bullseye still has more health than either of us put together. And he plays Study the Target, which draws him 3 cards and gains him an action. So it's just lots and lots of tempo. And things aren't looking great on my end. Maria has access to the +2, but doesn't currently have range to Bullseye. And of course, Paul baits out another good defense with a For My Next Trick, which is just so good in Bullseye. If you compare For My Next Trick and Fake Out, one is just strictly better, which can be kind of frustrating given, especially in this matchup, given how consistently Bullseye can attack and kind of dance out of range. But it is what it is, and you know, the deck compositions are obviously very different. So Bullseye still within range of Maria, but we'll choose to shoot Black Widow. It is a 6 because he's already won a combat into a 3, and of course no after combat effects. Again, I called that wrong. If I had played Caught in a Web against For My Next Trick, it would have been great, but I did not. So that was not ideal on my part. So we're down to 2 health on both of my characters against a 10 health Bullseye. It's not looking great. Paul playing this really well, just methodically taking both fighters apart. It's a momentous stay into a Widow's Kiss, so just the 1 damage through, and Bullseye wasn't gonna walk away anyway, and maneuver. I had the Mechanical Wrench, and maybe I should have used it, but I don't think I expected that particular card. I will boost in and play the Kinshasa Directive, forcing Paul to discard both cards in hand, which is not bad. I will then search my deck for another mission. I do check my deck that the missions do exist because I haven't seen any of them yet, and I pick up the Madripoor Sanction. Might be too little too late though. Paul does take 2 cards in hand because he needs cards in hand, and I'm not entirely sure what to do because all Paul needs to do is hit me once reasonably hard. Yeah, I've got 1 health left, so yeah, here we are. We'll boost and we'll play the Forensic Agenda, which deals 2 auto damage because I'm stood next to Bullseye, and then acquire a new mission. The auto damage is starting to come in, but Bullseye is still on 8 health. And I go through the whole of my deck to find the scheme that's on the bottom, which is the Budapest Gambit. So yeah, not looking great, and like a ricochet or any sort of damage will do, and it's a Wild Grace Assassin that's buffed by the battlefield item into a feint, and that will of course hit over and take out Black Widow. So round 1 goes to Bullseye. This is me looking through my deck and realizing, oh, all of the good cards are still in there. So I just drew all of the not so good cards, I suppose, and crucially, no missions. We're going to go for another round because I think I said at the time this wasn't a good representation of Black Widow, both because I played pretty poorly, but also because we didn't get to see her do kind of what she's built to do, and Paul very kindly obliges. So we go for a second game. I think it is a kind of a tough matchup because Bullseye has so much consistency in attack and can always attack, whereas Black Widow's deck is trying to do about 3-4 different things at a time, and so you don't always have the right cards to defend with. But we'll see how it goes in the next one. So same starting positions, we draw up and Paul goes first. Same song, different verse. We'll walk into the corridor next to the battlefield item and fire away at Widow. So here is a I Never Miss into a Widow's line. He is able to boost that by 3, so I just take 3 damage straight up. That's how that works. I get to move Bullseye a little bit closer. I'm not sure that will help greatly, but it's something. It keeps his options at least slightly limited. So I'll maneuver up to him, and Maria will take cover with the +2, and I'll fake out into a feint. I'm not terribly upset by that, just because feint is pretty good against a fair amount of Black Widow's kit. So drawing out a feint is fine, even if the fake out didn't fire. So Bullseye will take a step back down the corridor and then fire the laser turret at me. So that's 2 more damage. That's 5 damage through in the first 2 turns. Yeah, still not looking ideal for me. I will attack, and it's a Widow's Kiss into a tactical retreat. So I knew that Bullseye didn't have any defenses bigger than a 3, so I knew that would do at least 1 damage. And crucially, Bullseye cannot run away. There is me expressing my feelings on that matter. And then I'll play the Moscow Protocol, which I could only do in this order. I had to be in the same zone first action so that I could hit him and then play the scheme to draw a card, get another scheme, which is the Kinshasa Directive, and follow up, hopefully. So that was quite fortunate for me. It turns out that Widow's Line move was at least reasonably well thought out. And then I'll simply maneuver back. I think I'm still in range though, so it's not ideal. Here is an I never miss until Widow's Line. Again, the same sort of deal. And we will boost with another 3, so that's 3 more damage. I'm down to 5 health. And I think I've done 1 damage so far. So again, not looking great. Then Bullseye pox on the +2. I will play the Kinshasa Directive, causing Paul to discard both cards in hand. So he has an empty hand, and I'll draw back up to the Budapest Gambit, which is the draw one, if I have no cards in hand. I'll then maneuver. I would love to have taken kind of advantage of the fact that Paul has no cards in hand, but I wasn't in range because he's on the other end of the map. I'll move Maria in closer though. So Paul double maneuvers, takes 2 cards, and will sit by the EMP array because, of course, he doesn't want more discards to happen. So he will defend it, which is pretty advantageous for me because it brings him in range of my fighters. So again, not too upset about that. So we'll maneuver in. Maria will attack and use the battlefield item. I think that's the gloves. And it's a 5 value acting director of S.H.I.E.L.D. into a ricochet. So that's 2 damage through. Paul will get to ping damage into someone, presumably Black Widow. And then I'll get to move my fighters and recur a scheme. So far, I've only played 2 schemes. The Kinshasa Directive, which is the discard one, seems ideal. It seemed to work last time, so it was pretty good. Paul will just double mover and stay there because he doesn't want that discard to happen. Maria will hit with a mechanical wrench. It's a 6 value acting director of S.H.I.E.L.D. into a 2 that is actually just a 2. So 4 damage chunks through. I get to recur the Moscow Protocol. And I get to move. I'm not sure if I want to move because being there is pretty good. But yeah, Black Widow will move to Paul's starting space, which is potentially pretty telling. I'll shuffle the Moscow Protocol back in. And Maria will just stay there. Second action, match for sanction. Black Widow is in your opponent's starting space. That opponent's fighters will take 2 damage. There we go. So we're starting to see Black Widow's kit come together and all the kind of combinations firing. So Maria setting up Black Widow into, which could have been the Moscow Protocol or a starting space scheme or something else. So this seems a better showing of Black Widow's abilities. Here's I plan to be here into Widow's Line, so that's 2 damage over the 3. I do get to move Bullseye 2 spaces though. That plan to be here just so strong, that 5 value attack. I have 2 health left. So Paul is planning to capitalize on this. I don't think he's realized that I moved him out of range. So I moved him specifically 6 spaces away with the Widow's Line to prevent the double attack. So he will instead take a maneuver and stay with 2 cards in hand. That was pretty clutch. Widow's Line really doing some work there. So I'll take a maneuver. We're in a weird spot. Maria Hill will walk up to the EMP device, which is now available, and discard the rest of Paul's hand. I have a reasonable hand at the moment, but I have more cards than Paul, so I'm happy just to discard some, and I don't really mind if Maria is taken out at this point, so I'll discard the defense card. Paul will take a double maneuver, back up to 2 cards in hand. I will play the Budapest Gambit. I have 2 or fewer cards in hand, so I'll draw 5 cards, discard a random card from my opponent, so that's down to 1 card in hand, and then acquire a new mission. There goes the tactical retreat, which would have been useful for Bullseye. I'll then acquire a new mission, which is the top card of my deck, Kinshasa Directive, which is the discard one. Paul mistakes me saying that for him having to discard his hand. He does not, but we know he has a ricochet in hand, and that's it now. So we'll maneuver because we have to, and then discard down. So at this point, I have a handful of cards, and they're all looking now pretty good. so I don't really want to discard any, but I'll boost with one, and which is a corner web. As we saw from last game, it only sometimes triggers, and a Widow's Bite, which is quite telling of the other cards in my hand if I'm discarding a full value attack at this point. Bullseye's still on 5 health, me on 2, so it's still a very, very close game. All you have to do is put 2 damage in. Here is a 4 into a 4. Paul hadn't won a combat yet, so that effect doesn't trigger, and he is unable to move. Here is a follow-up attack by Black Widow. It's a 5 into a 3, Widow Sting, and Master Strategist would trigger first, moving Bullseye 4 spaces, up to 4 spaces. Sorry, exactly 4 spaces, and then Widow Sting would move him 3, so he can't really escape at this point. Yeah, so Black Widow will have another follow-up shot, or Maria will, one of the other. I will move 3 spaces, and then here's a undefended acting director of S.H.I.E.L.D. into Bullseye for the win. So, really tight game 2 there. Widow down to 2 health, and then pulls out the win against Bullseye. I've had a couple of games on this map since as Black Widow, and I really think part of what we saw there is due to the EMP array, because having a bunch of discard effects in your deck, as well as a battlefield item that will also unconditionally discard cards, is really, really powerful. And it can, anytime we can compound an effect, it can kind of snowball out of control a little bit. And so we saw there for the last third of the game, Bullseye pretty much only had 0 to 2 cards in hand, which he can do quite a lot with, but it's still very limiting in that regard. So one really notable thing that I learned about Black Widow, playing Black Widow, it might sound really obvious, but I haven't played her that much, is I really didn't think Moscow Protocol was very good. You kind of have to jump through hoops to get it, especially against a fighter like Bullseye. And then the reward you get is like, oh, a card draw and an action, yay. But that's not really what it's for. It's to find your other missions. And I figured with 4 missions in deck, you'd probably see some of them naturally by drawing, right? Like, Bruce has 6 Jeets and Sinbad has his Voyages and stuff. But actually no, it turns out 4 is, sometimes you just won't see them. So that first mission is a way of guaranteeing that you'll see your next mission, and your kit allows you to complete those missions pretty effectively, and there lies the power of Black Widow. So PSA, don't throw away your first mission to a boost unless it's really necessary, because it will give you consistency as you play. Thank you everyone for watching. If you want to support the channel, you can buy a coffee at the Recursion Cafe. The link is in the description below. Cheers, see you next time.